All right. So the first thing I'm going to demo is not this project, but this project. Dealing with REDCap version changes in the URL. So you can see up here in our REDCap URL, even though you go to redcap.uahs.arizona.edu, it redirects to a version and then has the other, page information and all that stuff on the end. This became a problem, and the way it came to my attention is we have a project that I create reports for investigators and coordinators, and every week I send out a notification to them if they have reviews that need to be done. And the way I track that is I create a report that has the reviews that they need to do, and it automatically updates, and then it checks if that report has any records, and if it does, it automatically sends a notification out. And normally you would just have, so I just created an example report here. Your reports have a report ID, and normally I would just put this in the notification. The problem is that if I hard code this, the way it was done is I would hard code this into the notification. By the time most of the time if they looked at it, because if I did it on a Monday, they'd have the entire week. We weren't doing, I think we're doing updates every week or so. But it really just depends on when Terry runs an update. So they may get their notification and the link is working because it has the correct version number here. Now, if Terry does an update, that link no longer works. And then I would have to go into the notification and hard code the new value for the version. And if I have to do that every week, it's kind of a pain. It kind of defeats the purpose of setting up an automatic notification if I have to go in and manually fix it every time. So it got to be an issue. So I started looking into how can I fix this problem? And my first thought was trying to create a field because I usually, anytime I have to kind of hard code something or have to repeat something over and over, I'll try to put it in a field that just lives somewhere on a form that's hidden, and that way I can just tinker with it in one place. But the problem with this is I need this to be dynamic. I need to be able to update this or have it update without me having to do it. So that made me think of smart variables. And let's go to the designer here just so I can get this smart variable stuff up. And I just look for URL to see if there's a URL that REDCap has, because a smart variable for the URL. Because, for example, you have one for, the instruments, you have one for the surveys. So if I scroll down here, you can see down at the bottom, there's a REDCap base URL and then a REDCap version URL. There's also, if I just look at the version, there's two different tags. There's one for the version and one for the URL. So when I first tried this, I tried the REDCap version URL. So just to show you how I have my notification set up, basically I have the way this demo project is I just have a demo form and I have a report. So ideally there'd be a separate report for each coordinator, and this would only have their records in it, the ones that they're assigned to. But for this demo, it's just one report. Now I just have to create the notifications, and I created 3 different versions of the notification to show you for this demo here. This first one is the hard-coded URL. So if I go into this, I just have it set up to where the demo form, if it's saved, it's going to automatically trigger, so that way we get the URL, or sorry, the email. If we go into the code here for the email, I just have a simple anchor tag, an HTML link, and I'm putting the value of that report here. And I'm getting that value from this window here. So let me just open that in a different window here. I'm getting it up here. And if you are if you're having to do a bunch of these and you don't want to have to open up the reports every time to get to them, if you go to the report page, it's this auto ID, this report ID that you just have to fill in at the end of each one. So once you have that URL, once you have this whole URL, you just have to change this last ID here because that's the report ID. So if you have to build this over and over, you could just copy this notification and put them in, which is what I did the first time. Now what it's doing is it's just giving me a thing that says report link. I click on it and it takes me to the report. The second iteration of this was using the REDCap version URL. And now what I'm doing is it's the same thing. I'm having a report link, but I'm also, just so for the demo purposes, you can see what value it's generating. I put the smart variable down here. So if we go to this, now this first bit is replaced by REDCap version URL. And then I just want the last information here. Now, it's working now, but when I built this project earlier in the week, for some reason it was, because REDCap's kind of, sometimes it's too smart for its own good, and REDCap will generate a value when you're not expecting it. And to give you an example here, I'll just create another notification and we'll just call it test. Actually, let me just copy this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a dummy value. I'll just put like report. I'll just leave this bit here. Because what was happening when I built this earlier in the week is that REDCap will automatically put in the REDCap at .uahs.arizona.edu part. So it would try to generate a functioning link for you automatically. So we'll just change this to test. So we'll try that. So the reason I say that is what was happening was it was giving me the URL, but it was kind of saying, it was like redcap.uahs.arizona.edu / redcap.arizona.uhs.arizona.edu. So it was REDCap was appending what it thought it needed, and then it was doing the smart variable. And then I had an issue where it was doing the REDCap at redcap.uahs.arizona.edu, and then it would have the brackets for REDCap version URL, and then it would have the actual smart variable value. So it was really weird. I don't know if it was fixed in this most recent update, but it seems like it's working now. So just to reiterate, this wasn't working when I first tried it, but when I tried it this morning, preparing for this demo, it was working. So this is an option. And finally, what I ended up doing was just using the REDCap version action tag. And that's because all I wanted was the number. The rest of the URL stays the same. It's just I need this little bit here to update. So this is what I went with when I had to update the other project with all the notifications, because for me, that was the smallest moving part. I didn't want to have to worry about other values. I just needed the version number to change and update. And in order to do that, I have to have the rest of this REDCap_v that leads up to it, and then the rest of this, data export, all that. It's hard coded in. So let me just cancel this, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my form and just save it so it triggers all the notifications, and then I'll show you the notifications as they come in. And while we're waiting for that, this is kind of an explanation of what the difference is. It might be hard to see in the little window, so I put this on here with the highlights. So this is just a hard-coded one, and this was actually one of the problems we had before. You can see here, this is the old version. And then this is the REDCap URL version URL, and this is what it should be generating, and it's what it's generating today. But before, it was actually putting this REDCap version URL in here, the actual smart variable, and then putting the value. So then it was a link that was broken. And then the REDCap version just adds a 14.1.2. So this is what I ended up going with here. All right, so this is the hard-coded, this is the email with the hard-coded link. And if I click on it, you can see here that it says page cannot be found, because this is the link that's hard-coded. This is the link that it's trying to render. So that's the old busted link. And then the test URL, this is the test URL. And you can see here, this is interesting because if I click on it now, this is the link that it's giving me. Whereas earlier in the week, it was actually giving me, it would be like this. It would be this little bit and then whatever I left. So REDCap was automatically trying to put in redcap@uahs.arizona.edu. So it looks like they may have fixed that, which is nice. And then the REDCap version URL, or REDCap version URL. You can see here in the email that this is what renders out from that smart variable, is all the way up to the version number. So if I click on report link, it should take us to the report, which it does. And earlier in the week, this wasn't working, but it's working now. And then finally, the REDCap version. So you can see here the smart tag is returning just the 14.1.2. And if I click on here, it's going to take us to the exact same report. So if you have to create a report, there's also a REDCap base URL. So let me go back to the smart variables here. So if you ever need to have the just redcap@arizona.edu there, you can have that put in as well. So that's another, if you're just doing something like, this is for reports, but if you have something else that is going to be referring to REDCap, you can put that in there. But if you need to create a report that is generating a URL that's pointing to a REDCap page, instead of hard coding it, it's better to use the smart variables, and you can use the REDCap version or REDCap version URL smart variable.